All right, we all know that Brock Purdy has been ruled out. Mac Jones is going to start instead of him tomorrow night in LA. I was actually at SFO Airport already just about an hour ago, and then Mike texted me. There's all of this misinformation coming out regarding Brock Purdy and his status, and I literally turned around from the airport and I came back to San Francisco. I'm not going to fly until to LA until tomorrow because it's time to just clear this up and put some actual factual information out there. A lot of these aggregator accounts are taking conjecture and making it seem like it is fact coming from inside the 49ers building regarding Brock Purdy. And at the end of the day, a lot of people are, I think, being misled by all of this. So I think it's important enough to do a video right now. So the key thing here is that Brock Purdy, following the game against Jacksonville, felt better than he did after the game against the Seattle Seahawks when he first injured his toe. It's not like he stepped into some kind of time machine and the injury got a whole lot worse. Sometimes there is a reality at play. And I think it's important that people actually subscribe to reality every once in a while. It seems optional these days, but every once in a while, why don't we just sit back and consider the fact that the 49ers played on Sunday? They've got a Thursday game against the Rams on artificial turf. Players are sore after games on Sundays, and they generally need, especially if they're coming in testing an injury for the first time in an in-game situation, they generally need a longer runway to be ready the next Sunday. This isn't the first time that that's happened. The Thursday game is a little too quick of a turnaround for Brock Purdy, who gutted it out on Sunday against Jacksonville. Therefore, he is inactive. And there's a whole lot of other stuff that we're going to go through. But first, let's Exhibit A, our first piece of evidence. This is what Brock Purdy said about his toe yesterday.
How do you feel physically compared to how you felt after the week one game?
I feel a lot better compared to the week one game for sure. Toes just a little sore from the game, but nowhere near as bad as after Seattle.
How do you feel?
Okay, now let me go through some of the facts that we know in this situation and stay away from all the conjecture. I'm just going to list, I put a bunch of them on my X account right now. You can go read along with me as we go through this, but I want to put this in concise form for everyone. So when you're having your discussions at the water cooler and with your family at the dinner table, you could at least be armed with what we know to be true instead of a bunch of speculation and aggregation accounts picking and choosing what they want to get some clicks. One, Purdy's status improved quickly enough last week for him to give it a go, to play against Jacksonville. Every single NFL game is important. The 49ers almost won. Had they caught a couple more of Brock Purdy's passes, putting him out there would have worked out, at least in terms of getting a win. But his status did indeed improve enough for him to play last week. It was much better than it had been the week prior. I know that 2 to 5 weeks was the original timeline. I think that Ian Rappaport floated out there. Purdy was feeling well enough to go out and play after the 2 weeks. Mac Jones, this is point 2, and this one's really important, and a lot of people seem to disregard this one. Mac Jones was actually more hurt and more limited than Brock Purdy in practice last week entering the Jacksonville game. He had a knee injury that he suffered against Arizona. Remember the big brace? That in some ways dictated the 49ers' hand last week. You had 2 quarterbacks, Brock Purdy and Mac Jones, and you had one who was more healthy than the other. It just so happened to be that Purdy was more healthy than Jones. You don't just trot out the more injured quarterback. This week, the opposite is true because Brock Purdy is going through that toe soreness following the game against Jacksonville. Mac Jones has had more time to recover because injuries typically over time get better. Mac Jones listed as a full participant this week, healthier than Brock Purdy. I hope that makes sense. Again, a lot of people are disregarding the fact that Purdy was actually healthier than Mac Jones leading up to the game against Jacksonville. 3, it is impossible to know how an injury will react to an in-game situation until a player is actually in one. So Brock Purdy might have felt perfectly fine over the course of the week, But that was practice. And then when you hit game speed, things are moving faster. Obviously, there's contact that's allowed. You can be tackled. You're probably, pressing against the ground harder on some of your cuts just because adrenaline is there, and you're exerting yourself at a higher level. Anybody who's ever done a racing sport, like track or swimming, will tell you that things operate differently when you're actually in a competition versus practice. No matter how many times you try to simulate things in practice, it's not going to be the way that it is in an actual game. So at some point, Brock Purdy was going to have to come back and see how the toe would react in an in-game situation. At some point, it was going to have to happen. If he felt really good in practice, well, that point where he did come back to test it would make sense to be the game against Jacksonville. His toe, though, even though it's sore coming out of the game against Jacksonville, even though they did that in-game test against Jacksonville, even though he gutted through it against Jacksonville, his toe is still in better shape now than it was following the initial injury after week 1 against Seattle. That's what you just heard from Brock Purdy when we played the clip from him. Soreness is a result of full speed in-game work. And yes, this is a tricky situation. Everybody knows that turf toes, whatever you want to call this, on the side, I don't know exactly where it is on the toe for Brock Purdy, but everybody knows that this is a tricky situation. The 49ers know this. Doctors will tell you the same thing. And in tricky situations, sometimes it's really, really hard to pinpoint how somebody's going to feel after activity that you cannot simulate in practice. You can only simulate it during a game. Now, a lot of the shoddy reporting today is coming using justification that the fact that Brock Purdy is not quarterback 3, the fact that he's been ruled out of the game altogether instead of being given an emergency title, is somehow indicative of the fact that his toe has severely regressed. And this is the red flag. This is why you can't just trust information coming through all these aggregator accounts that don't know the rules, the actual roster rules of football. Anybody using emergency QB3 roster status as backwards confirmation of Brock Purdy's injury status is just showing that they don't know the rules. The reason that Brock Purdy is not QB3 is not tied to how his toe feels. It's tied to the fact that to make Brock Purdy emergency QB3 in this game, the 49ers would literally have to promote Adrian Martinez from the practice squad to the 53-man roster. And since Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall are also out, since Jordan Watkins is also out, since Robert Beal Jr. is also out, the 49ers simply do not have enough 53-man roster space to work with at this point. By NFL rule, the emergency third quarterback has to come from the 53-man roster. He's got to be the third guy on the 53-man roster. Right now, the 49ers only have 2 QBs on that 53-man roster. To illustrate for you, if you need this in visual terms, I'll zoom in right here. Brock Purdy, obviously injured right now. Mac Jones, starter tomorrow. Adrian Martinez, do you see Adrian? He's on the right side of the delineating line. He's on the practice squad. The 49ers would literally have to move Adrian to the left side here. They'd have to promote him full time. And then they could order their quarterbacks how they want, with the third one being the emergency third. However, that would cost them a 53-man roster spot. So the 49ers elected not to do that. They don't think that it's worth it. And we'll talk about strategy for tomorrow in just a second. They deemed Adrian Martinez to be better suited as quarterback 2, being elevated from the practice squad. You can elevate a player temporarily from the practice squad without promoting them to the 53-man roster 3 times. They've done it with Adrian Martinez twice. So there are going to be decisions to make after this game against the Rams, but the 49ers want to get through this game without formally promoting Adrian Martinez at this moment, because they would like to see how they get through this game before actually making moves. They want to maximize the use of the 3 elevations first. So that's the biggest red flag to me, is that you're seeing people reverse justify a speculative take on Brock Purdy without actually thinking about the roster rules that the 49ers are very, very clearly constrained by. And I get that some of this stuff is complicated, but some of these aggregator accounts should not be so certain about what they're putting out there without actually checking the rule book first. I think that's really, really important to do. So that's one of my main points. I think an overarching point, and Tim Kawakami, my coworker at the San Francisco Standard, tweeted this really simply, and it's part of my bullet point list here. Thursday games on artificial turf are invitations to the inactive list. I mean, Occam's razor means that the simplest explanation is usually the true explanation. 49ers play on Sunday. There is soreness on Sunday. The next game is on Thursday. That's an awfully quick turnaround. We've heard Richard Sherman. We've heard several players complaining about these quick turnarounds and how bad they are for the health and safety of players. Well, the quickest way to ensure the maximization of the health and safety of your players is to sit your injured guys on a Thursday game following a Sunday game, especially if that Thursday game is being played on artificial turf, point blank. That was the first thing that Kyle Shanahan told us this week regarding Brock Purdy. He said, hey, guys, there's some soreness coming out of the game. We're not that concerned about it for the long term, but the fact that we have a game on Thursday means that he might not be able to get out there and be 100% out of his capacity to protect himself. As simple as that. So anyway, knowing those, that's like 5 or 6 bullet points that I just gave you. Knowing all those, this is the 49ers' optimal long-term play because they're obviously thinking about this in a long-term lens. You compete as hard as possible with those who are healthy against the Rams tomorrow. Throw the kitchen sink at them schematically. Do whatever you feel might give you the best chance at a greasy win, right? A couple turnovers here might help. Maybe getting the run game working against the Rams is a possibility, although I think that you need a fully stocked pass game to open that up. Do what you think might work tomorrow, but go into that game realizing that it's going to be a long shot. Go into that game realizing that, 3-2 is a likely outcome. A loss is a likely outcome. You're a touchdown underdog, and I think the line probably is growing at this point. But also realize that 3-2, the record that you'd be in with a loss is not the end of the world. You'd still be in solid position moving forward. So give the injured guys, and that's Brock Purdy, that's Ricky Pearsall, that's Jawan Jennings, that's Robert Beal Jr., Jordan Watkins, he might be in another boat entirely with the calf injury, but give the injured guys a full 2-week rest here as a bye instead of running them out there on a short week if they're already hurt on artificial turf. Give them that full 2-week rest and see where they are on October, I want to say, let's look at the calendar. Let's see what the exact date for the Tampa Bay game is. October 12th against Tampa Bay. The 49ers don't have a bye until December, like early December. It is the latest bye that they have ever had. Obviously, the guys that are hurt right now can use a bye now, so the 49ers are artificially creating it. Think in terms of the big picture, the long game. If you're going to be facing a longer shot to win this game anyway, do not compromise the entire season for it right now, right? That I think that the thinking from the 49ers is as simple as that. Unlike the Rams, the Bucs have big health issues of their own, and their injury statuses are fluid, just like the 49ers statuses. But there's enough room for improvement in the 49ers specific injury cases over the next 10 days, although we don't know exactly how quickly, Purdy will lose his soreness, and we don't know exactly how quickly Jawan Jennings will get better and Ricky Pearsall will get better. I can for sure tell you that there's a lot more room for positive improvement, mobility upwards over the next 10 days before October 12th than there is over the course of a 4-day week between a game against Jacksonville and LA on a Thursday night. So you circle the wagons, you take a step back, you circle the wagons with the injured players, give them a little bit of a bye week, and push your chips in for October 12th. From a strategic point of view, it makes too much sense. That's exactly, I think, what we see the 49ers are doing. Does that mean that you're conceding on Thursday? Not necessarily. Crazier things have happened in the NFL. I remember the 2021 49ers who ended up in the NFC Championship game against the Rams getting blown out of their own building by Arizona's backups in Week 9 of that 2021 season. This is the league. Mac Jones, I think the 49ers have either the first or second best quarterback room in the league. It's either Purdy and Jones or Matthew Stafford and Jimmy Garoppolo in LA. Bottom line is the 49ers have a very good QB room. And Mac Jones has played well. It hadn't been as good as Purdy, but he's played well so far in this 2025 season. So this is why you went out and got Mac Jones. So he can deliver in situations like this. Now you're facing a lot more on the injury loss front, and LA's the number 3 DVOA team in all football. So I get it. Your odds are long. I've picked the 49ers to lose this game, 27-17. You guys saw the prediction video earlier today. But you always give it your best shot. And the best shot for the 49ers, not just in the short term, but in the long term, is to play Mac Jones, play some of their reserve wide receivers, because Ricky Pearsall has got his knee injury and Juwan Jennings is dealing with 3 different things: his ankle, his shoulder, his rib injury. You give it your best shot with some of the reserves. And when I talk about schematic creativity for San Francisco in this game against LA, maybe we see some Isaac Guerrero. Maybe we see some Jordan James. They don't have George Kittle. Now they could, when they circle the wagons for this game against Tampa Bay, assuming Purdy can improve enough to where they feel comfortable running him out against the Bucs, he'll have George Kittle by his side, likely coming off of injured reserve. He's still got to miss one more game against the Rams. So you could see in the larger picture that the 49ers do have a vision for how this is going to improve. It's never a guarantee. Nothing is guaranteed, especially in a violent sport. More guys can get hurt tomorrow. I know 49ers fans hate to hear that, but you've got to do what is strategically optimal for you at every single forward step. And this is what the 49ers feel is strategically optimal. And they're going to go try to shock LA, shock a lot of their own fans, shock me with the guys that they have available. And maybe it is time to get creative given the thinness of the roster, the skeleton crew that they are throwing out there. I mean, if you look at the wide receiver position, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but we can zoom in. Pearsall, Jennings, both out. So it's going to be DeMarcus Robinson, Kendrick Bourne, MVS, Sky Moore. I think, one of the elevations is going to have to be Adrian Martinez. You only get 2 of them. I think the second elevation is probably going to be Russell Gage, unless you feel that you need to elevate elsewhere on this roster to help things fill out, unless you go defense heavy. But I think that Martinez and Gage are the best bets. Unless the 49ers make some moves tomorrow ahead of the game, they can always make a 53-man promotion ahead of the game tomorrow so that they have more players effectively coming up in the practice squad. But you only get 2 standard elevations, which are temporary from the practice squad. And I think Martinez will be one of them. We'll see on the other. But I would think that Russell Gage is a possibility for the other one. So anyway, those are the actual facts of this situation. Purdy's status improved last week, enough for him to play. It's not like the 49ers ran him out there on blind faith. There was definite improvement, and Mac Jones was actually more hurt, so their hand was in many ways forced anyway. It was impossible to know how you'd feel after the Jacksonville game until he actually played in the Jacksonville game. He felt sore, but even though he felt sore, again, his toe is in better shape than it was after the injury initially happened in week 1.
Physically compared to how you felt after the week 1 game?
I feel a lot better compared to the week 1 game for sure. Toe's just a little sore from the game, but nowhere near as bad as after Seattle.
This is a tricky situation. Toe injuries are always tricky, so the 49ers have to play this smart from the long-term perspective, since the soreness recurred after they ran the in-game test. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people might be also looking at this differently. If the 49ers, again, if Kendrick Bourne had caught the crosser, if the 49ers hadn't blown punt coverage on the 87-yard touchdown from Parker Harrison, they likely win that game. And yes, Purdy's still sore this week, and they have to go with Mac Jones against LA, but they're 4-0, and I think people are in a lot better mood, and I think they're a lot more understanding of how this whole unpredictable situation has evolved. But apparently some of that nuanced thinking is tough to communicate. So I'm going to do my best on the show, but good luck trying to parse all that through 200 character posts on X, on Twitter, wherever you get your little social media tidbits. Emergency quarterback 3, and this is what I really want you to remember. Anytime that you see a report on Brock Purdy, anytime you see speculation on Brock Purdy, and there's a lot of it using this right now to justify a speculation on Purdy on social media. He's not emergency QB 3. What's wrong? It's because the roster rules don't allow the 49ers to make Purdy emergency quarterback 3 without promoting Adrian Martinez full time. And I think it should be self-explanatory why they don't want to do that, because they've got so many other injuries and they need to conserve 53-man roster space. They're going to use the final elevation on Martinez. Then we'll see what they do after this game against the Rams. But it is very, very important to be educated on the rules before making assumptions. Finally, Thursday games on artificial turf are literal invitations to the inactive list. It's just the truth of the matter. Occam's razor. Sometimes the simplest theory is the correct one. I'm going to leave you guys with this. This can blow some minds. You know, you deal and you sift through so much garbage on the internet these days. Truth just flies out the window. Doesn't matter to people. They think that Brock Purdy, with his injured toe the other day, playing as one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. The truth is very, very far from that. This is adjusted efficiency. This is the quarterback leaderboard across the entire NFL. This accounts for drops. So it's not going to punish a quarterback when his receivers drop 6 of his passes. Number 1 in the NFL, he's playing really well, is Dak Prescott. Number 2, he's also playing really well, is Sam Darnold. Number 3 is Jared Goff. And look who's number 4 in adjusted efficiency so far over the course of his 2 starts. Both of them, he played the majority of both of them because he hurt his toe in that first game in the first half against Seattle. Playing with an injured toe against 2 of the best defenses in the league. Number 4, Brock Purdy. So if anybody would like to retract some of their emotionally charged takes from the immediate aftermath of the game against Jacksonville, you're welcome to. If you'd like to live in reality, you're welcome to. I like to live in reality. That was the purpose of this show, just to give you some facts. Again, I was in San Francisco airport ready to fly to LA. I just came back to do this live. I guess I'll get on a later flight. Probably tomorrow, because I want to go get a burrito right now. Everybody, thanks for watching. Hopefully that set the record straight. We will talk to you very soon.